So
in the
Nikki
process.
represents traditional conservative.
I wouldn't even call it conservative, because conservative can mean so many things.
Let's find the right word.
The machine?
I mean, I think
represents-
the
is
fancy
she
word
the
for this
deep
would be
state?
neoconservative.
But is she deep state?
She's a product of the deep state.
She's product of deep state.
She's a
Biden
product.
is also product of deep
Yeah,
state.
I would say so.
So
They're
essentially,
puppets of the deep state,
okay,
yeah.
that's a great way to look at it, because it feels as if, for the average person, that Biden is being run, right?
He is being run.
He's being run. That's what the average person, but we don't know what really that means. Who runs him? Do you have names of people who run him?
It's just, so it comes back to this, man. It's the machine. You could.
But what's
you could
the
pick,
machine?
You
Like-
could pick your Susan Rices or the Hillary Clintons or the Barack Obamas, but it doesn't matter.
But
it's
currently,
like,
do we know who's doing
It's like
it?
the San Antonio Spurs, right? It doesn't matter
But I know
who's
who
actually
runs that.
playing.
Popovich runs that.
But
Who's
he-
the Popovich?
Yeah, so I think imagine if Popovich steps out in the middle of a game and the whole thing just keeps running as its own machine.
Becky Hammond steps in.
It-
I know the coaching staff. I don't even know if she's not there anymore. But what I'm
But
saying
it doesn't
is,
matter who it is, and the machine still runs.
I'm aware
so,
it runs.
So it is. Here's how it works. Here's how it works.
Here we go. And this is not to go, I want to catch you. I don't think
No,
that you're using
I don't take it
rhetoric.
that way.
I'm genuinely trying to understand
Yeah.
a phrase that I feel like I've used without really knowing.
So at a certain point, the bureaucracy becomes its own creation. That's what it is. So if you want to take, for example, the FBI.
Can I say one thing
Yeah.
about this and how it helps me understand?
Sure.
So in Hollywood, before I did really anything in entertainment, and I was on the outside of it, I thought that there was these like organized meetings amongst people in Hollywood. They're like, here's the agenda. We're going to push trans. We're going to push gay. We're
Doesn't
going to
work
push
that way.
Hindu.
I doubt
What
it.
I learned
I doubt it works
is
that
that it's people that are trying to keep their job.
Yeah.
And by trying to keep their job, they're doing the things that they believe will be rewarded, or very least they won't be
Yes.
punished.
Yes.
So is this what you mean by?
So there's a version of that. I mean, I think that a lot of what most people refer to as conspiracy theories, the ones that certainly are true, are really just an amalgam of collective incentives that are hiding in plain
Yes,
sight. That's
that
really,
we think
yeah.
there's these nefarious individuals that are holding
Right.
the puppet
There
strings.
is no smoke-filled
Doesn't
room.
even have to be.
You're
Yes.
missing if you're
Yes.
fixated on where's the smoke-filled room, you're missing the point.
Right.
Right. And so I think that this idea of that you're not supposed to utter. The great replacement theory or whatever, this idea that there's an intentional plot to supplant the native white stock of the U.S. for a bunch of people crossing the southern border to permanently secure electoral outcomes to the contrary. That's conspiracy theory. But if you take great replacement theory out of it, you take the idea of somebody concocting this in a smoke-filled room out of it, and then you just look at the last 20 years of policy, much of one of the two political parties in the U.S., as recently as about a decade ago, said, well, immigration, legal or not, is going to be a key to securing lasting electoral majorities. And so that's why
So now
we
they're
should tend to favor
incentivized.
this. Including even in the context of that was,
right.
you can't even remember the context, was convincing a kind of Bernie-esque minority view that was sort of skeptical of competition for domestic workers to sort of, it was a carrot to say, no, I know that this might, like, in the short run against some of the things you stand for, but think about what it could open up in the long run if we have lasting electoral majorities. So it was earnest as a persuasion mechanism that today, if offered, uttered by people on the so-called other side, becomes a conspiracy theory when it's nothing more than just a statement of incentives hiding in plain sight. So it goes with the bureaucracy. And I want to say a word about the bureaucracy. I don't love the word deep state only because it implies that it's limited to the government. What I call it, people don't like it when I say this and they say it doesn't resonate with people, but the word that I use is it's the managerial class.
Is Jamie Dimon part of the managerial class?
I think the people 2 to 3 layers below Jamie Dimon absolutely are, and I think in some sense Jamie Dimon is ish on it. So there's 3 classes of people. I talk about this in my first book, Woking, a little bit. I mean, you got the creators, right? The actual, you could be a professor at a university as opposed to the associate dean of God knows what. Could be the entrepreneur proprietor who started the company as opposed to the vice president of human resources. Could be the elected president of the United States versus the class that sits underneath him. You've got the creators. You've got the constituents, customers, shareholders, voters, and then you've got the managerial class, who are the higher middle management bureaucracy designed to administer that which the creators have created with the intention of serving the constituents, but to make it scalable. Like that's the basic premise of it, in a corporate context or not. And I think we live in a moment right now where the balance of power between those 3 categories has vastly shifted towards the managerial class, the committee class. as we could call it, the permanent bureaucracy, or what we would call in government, the permanent state. I think it's true in every sphere of our lives right now. I think it's true in corporate America. I think it's true in universities. But it so happens, and I do think it's the mother of all bureaucracies, it is absolutely true in the government that the people who we elect have almost nothing to do with what actually impacts most people's everyday lives compared to the permanent machine that sits under it and is fundamentally agnostic to the political party of who's on top, as long as they're going to keep the party going. So Joe Biden's one version of that, Nikki Haley's another version of that. So either of which is a safe choice.
Deep state is essentially just bureaucracy. Yeah. And your mission as president would have been to eliminate,
dismantle,
would have been 75% of
a jackhammer, and that's just like a chainsaw.
And I'm just trying to help people who might be like, oh, this guy wants to abolish the Department of Education. What the fuck is that? You're just trying to eliminate the bureaucracy from the Department of Education. Eliminate the bureaucracy from so many of the FBI.
Because the bureaucracy itself is causing what? Is causing a separation between what the constituents want and what the executive.
The dissipation of accountability is what disappears.
So they know the managerial folks no longer have accountability to their constituents.
That's right.
And that is because there is this.
They don't even have constituents. That's the thing. They don't even have constituents. So I'll give it to you in a corporate context so we can depoliticize it, then we can bring it back to politics. Like in corporate America right now, and this is where I've spent my career shortly before running for president, is you have something that happened basically in original OG capitalism. You have the proprietor who's also the owner, who's also the CEO and the operator. Then it all comes down to a question of scale. So the question is, we couldn't scale that without hiring professional management so that the owner can do other things and create new things or whatever the owner wants to do. And so he hires the CEO and the CFO, et cetera. And so there was, like in business school, I don't know if any of you have background, doesn't matter, but if you go to business school, one of the things they'll teach you about is the separation of ownership and control. So that was like one of the original sins kind of thing, where the owner is no longer the person who exercises control, and that creates what they call a principal-agent problem. So the principal is the owner, the agent is the hired hand, and then like all of modern corporate law and business theory and securities law is designed to basically address that gap. So they have these things called fiduciary duties that the CEO will owe to the owner, but eventually they start behaving badly in a way that just flies around private jets at the owner's expense and claim that it's a business need. And then that's where the private equity industry was actually born in the 1980s, designed to sort of say, okay, well, we're going to retake ownership and clean house. And that was like where the Henry Kravises and the Steve Schwarzmans kind of came from. So that's in the realm of capitalism. Then something else happened in the last 20 years, which is, okay, so they said the shareholders are the ones who have control, but the managerial class, having not taken it over at the level of the corporation, went to the direction of the shareholders themselves. They started to pretend to be the shareholders in the guise of firms like BlackRock and State Street or Vanguard or whatever that aggregate, I don't know if these words mean anything to you. Okay. I mean, aggregate probably most of your money directly or indirectly, 401k accounts, pension funds, et cetera, to say that, okay, we are the shareholders, but we're representing other people's money, and so we're going to have you adopt policies that actually are in our own interest.
Not the shareholders.
Not the actual shareholders who are the capital owners.
But since we're the shareholders because we're holding their money.
We're holding the stock, exactly. So let's say you're BlackRock, and let's say you're two retirees. You give your money over to BlackRock. BlackRock buys shares in, I don't know, Apple.
Sure.
Actually, that's a good example to use because there was a specific
now
case
they're
with
using
Apple.
that leverage on Apple to do what they want.
Specifically on Apple and BlackRock, this is a real life story in 2022, voted for racial equity audits at Apple, which Apple initially said hell no to.
Yeah.
But they said, no, we're going to vote for it. And then back in the old school version, if the CEO was pushing that kind of philosophy, the shareholders would say, no, you're the agent.
You're held
I'm the
accountable.
principal and you have a fiduciary duty to me.
Yeah.
But it's always a cat and mouse game. But now it's gone to the shareholders and they're like, no, we are the shareholders. And we're telling you that you need to adopt this policy. BlackRock, right?
Yes.
Because today, if you go to the SEC's website and see who are the shareholders of Apple, they're going to be number 1 or 2 or 3 on the list.
This is really interesting.
And so it's always this cat and mouse game where the managerial class is always about getting one heads up. So there's a whole private sector version of this, and 2 of my 3 books are about this stuff, and we could go on for days about it. But I use that as an analog because sometimes when you talk about politics, people lose their mind. There's something similar going on, and I think of even greater import in the government, where there's a cat and mouse game between the elected representatives who, say what you will, still have to go back to their constituents every couple of years.
Yes.
Every 2, 4, or 6 years, depending on Congress, President, or Senate.
Yes.
And ask for permission to govern. Whereas what these people say is, no. How do we drain as much of that power as possible so that we're agnostic?
Who are these people?
The bureaucrats.
The bureaucrats.
Yeah.
So these people.
Absolutely.
These,
the people,
how are we
the people who
draining
work
as
for
much of
Anthony
the power
Fauci.
as
From the electeds as possible to make sure that we're agnostic to who actually gets into power in those seats in the first place.
So they're neutering them intentionally.
They're neutering them intentionally, yes. It depends how much detail you want to go into, but I can even tell you
all
some
the detail. This
okay.
this is very important because I think a lot of your ideas, when explained in this way, are incredibly digestible. And
The
that's
problem
why
is
you
cable
sit-
TV's 30-second hits or
Listen,
two and a half
can I-
minute
Hold on
hits.
1 second. That's
Yeah.
the game, though.
That is the game.
You know what
and
I
I've
mean?
learned this, and so I got to get good at that.